The bathroom lights buzzed faintly as the sun from the cafe windows spilled through the half-open door, painting a thin beam of daylight across the tiled floor. In that blindingly bright moment, the world seemed to freeze around Alina as the manager's hand tightened around her collar and slammed her back against the wall. Her chest shook as she struggled to breathe, her vision blurring not from pain but from the terror she had learned to bury, terror that now clawed its way back to the surface. The scent of coffee and fresh pastries from the outside hall mixed with the damp, metallic air of the restroom, turning the moment sickening and surreal. And somewhere behind her, the mirror reflected the doorway where a single shadow lingered, watching, waiting, fists slowly curling with silent fury. If you believe in hope, compassion, and second chances, let this moment be your ripple of love. Like, comment, share, and subscribe to keep these stories alive. Alina had survived far worse than a cruel manager during her years of struggle, but today, her strength felt paper-thin. She had come to this cafe just 6 months earlier after fleeing a past she didn't talk about, not even with the man who had brought light back into her broken world. Every morning she woke before dawn, walked 2 miles in cheap shoes, and forced a smile for customers even when exhaustion gnawed at her bones. She carried a quiet sadness, one molded by childhood abandonment and a life bouncing between foster homes where kindness was rare and temporary. She thought she had finally found peace in her new marriage, and for a time, her heart dared to believe she belonged somewhere at last. But today everything shattered again. The manager, Bren, towered over her with the kind of rage she had learned to read. It wasn't about a spilled order. It wasn't about a delayed table. It was about the resentment he felt toward anyone who looked weak, anyone he believed he could break. He had spent weeks targeting her with harsh words masked as guidance, sudden schedule changes to push her limits, and cold stares that felt like knives every time she passed him. Yet she stayed quiet, afraid to lose the job that kept her and her husband afloat. The hallway outside stayed filled with the scent of fresh bread, the chatter of customers, the clinking of cutlery, normal sounds that made the brutality of this moment feel even more isolating. She felt tears rising, but she fought them, remembering the promise she made to herself years ago, never let anyone see you collapse. She didn't know that her husband, Vero, was already watching. Vero had entered the cafe minutes earlier, planning to surprise her during her break with the purple orchids she loved. He wore a fitted gray suit, tattoos stretching from his collarbone toward his wrists, and hair streaked with silver that made him look colder than he truly was. The regular customers whispered about him, some feared him, others respected him, but no one knew the full truth. They didn't know that behind the expensive suit and quiet authority was a man who had clawed his way out of the darkness of organized crime. His past was stained, but his heart, bruised and complicated, had found something pure the day he met Alina. She had become the reason he chose redemption over revenge, and the reason he fought every day to be a different kind of man. Vero stood in the bathroom doorway now, frozen for a breath as he watched Bren's hand crush the collar of his wife's uniform. The sight awakened a storm inside him, rage, guilt, remembrance of every man he once was. His fists tightened, shoulders rising and falling with controlled fury. He had promised Alina he would never return to the violent world he left behind. He had promised her he would try to be gentle. But in this sunlight-lit bathroom, watching the woman he loved trembling against cold tiles, his promises felt fragile. Alina, unaware that Vero was behind them, felt a tear slip down her cheek. She remembered her mother's last words before walking out forever: strength isn't always a roar, sometimes it's the ability to stand even when your knees shake. But as Bren pressed closer, anger twisting his features, she didn't feel strong at all. She felt small. Breakable. Alone. The day had started so differently. Alina had woken before sunrise, packing Vero's breakfast, scribbling a small love note she hid in his coat pocket. The morning light had streamed into their tiny apartment, illuminating their second-hand furniture and the soft warmth of their shared life. They didn't have much, but they had each other, and that was enough. She had kissed him goodbye at the door, thinking the day would be simple, maybe even peaceful. But life had a way of testing the people who had already suffered enough. Outside the bathroom, a customer complained loudly about spilled sugar, the innocent sound echoing like irony through the tense space. Bren leaned in closer, his hand gripping tighter, his breath hot with anger. For Alina, fear cracked open old memories, of crowded group homes, of cold nights, of adults who yelled instead of comforting, of a childhood spent learning that pain often arrived without warning. She felt herself spiraling inward, her vision dipping as her knees weakened. And that was when Vero stepped forward. For Alina, time slowed. She felt the grip on her collar loosen as Bren suddenly stiffened. She followed his gaze over her shoulder and saw her husband standing there, silent, fierce, eyes filled with a storm she had prayed never to see again. The sunlight from the hallway framed him in a cold glow, highlighting the trembling tension in his jaw. His presence alone shifted the air, as if the whole room inhaled sharply. Vero did not shout. He did not rush. He walked forward with a controlled precision that came from years of surviving violence he never wanted her to know. Bren's bravado shriveled instantly, but Vero didn't touch him. He simply stepped between them, closing the space with a quiet authority more dangerous than a raised fist. Alina's breath quivered as Vero gently placed a hand over hers, grounding her trembling. She felt the warmth of his skin, the steadiness of his presence. For a moment, the world blurred around them, leaving only the comfort of his touch. Bren muttered excuses, stumbling back, his confidence dissolving into panic. But Vero didn't follow him. Instead, he turned to Alina, helping her steady herself, brushing away the strands of hair stuck to her damp forehead. His chest tightened with the realization of how close he came to losing control. He had built his new life on fragile hope, and seeing her shaken reminded him how easily everything could crumble. The cafe staff had gathered outside, whispering in hushed voices as Bren stormed out, mask of authority shattered. Some looked fearful, others relieved, but all understood a truth the manager had ignored for too long: kindness was not weakness, and cruelty always had consequences. Vero led Alina outside into the warm daylight, the sun washing over them like a soft balm. The street was alive with motion, passing cars, distant laughter, street vendors calling out to customers. Yet in this bustling world, they stood still, soul-tired but together. Vero blamed himself for not being there sooner. Alina blamed herself for staying silent too long. Both carried wounds the other desperately wanted to heal. The world tested them yet again, but this time, they refused to break. As they sat together on a small bench beside the cafe window, Alina leaned her head against his shoulder, letting the rhythm of his breathing calm her. He held her hand with a gentleness that felt almost sacred. She thought of all the nights he stayed awake battling his past, all the mornings he tried to build a better life, all the ways they held each other up when the world felt too heavy. And in that moment, she realized something profound: strength didn't come from denying pain, but from surviving it together. Suddenly, the story of her life felt different. Less like a tragedy and more like a journey towards something better. If this story is touching your heart right now, let your support be seen. Like, comment, share, and subscribe to keep these emotional stories alive. Their day didn't end in violence or revenge. It ended with healing, slow, imperfect, but real. Vero reported Bren's behavior to the owners, who immediately removed him from the cafe, offering Alina time off and heartfelt apologies. The staff promised her a safer, kinder environment, and for once, she felt supported by people outside her home. Before the final moment of the story, the narrator pauses to invite viewers to share their feelings. Please comment below what part of the story touched you the most. Alina and Vero walked home together beneath the soft glow of afternoon sun, fingers intertwined, hearts still fragile but beating in sync. They knew life would continue testing them, but they also knew they would face those trials side by side. Their pasts were heavy, their scars deep, yet love had given them something rare, a chance to rewrite their futures. And as they reached their apartment door, the world seemed quieter, calmer, filled with the possibility of healing. In the gentle warmth of that moment, Alina realized that even the most painful days could end in light when someone